Do you hate sales and IPS? Do you avoid it like the plague? But you want to make more money, right? Well, I have good news for you. You don't have to sell to make more money. So, how do you actually make more money without selling? Hi, I'm Sarah. I am the owner of Sarah Lindsay Photography. I've been a professional photographer for over 8 years now, and I gross 6 figures annually, only shooting 6 months out of the year. And just like you, I hated sales. Hated sales. I don't know about you, but when I heard the word sales, all I could think of was that slimy used car salesman that sold me my 1999 Saturn SC2 in high school. So when I began my journey as a photographer, I avoided sales and IPS for as long as I could. As long as I could before I just couldn't avoid it anymore. So what did I do? I hit the books and I learned everything I could about IPS and sales. You want to know what I found out? There's actually a better way to sell without being slimy. And in this class, that's exactly what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to tap into people's emotions to make the sale easier. You'll learn how to use words to guide the sale in your favor, and how simple actions can all lead to increasing your sales without making you feel slimy. You'll also learn psychological tactics to turn you into a sales ninja to help guide and nudge your clients to a higher sale, all while keeping your integrity intact, providing your clients with an incredible level of service, and ultimately increasing your sales. So, without further ado, let's dive in. All right, let's lay some groundwork. Why do people buy things? And how do we avoid being that slimy salesperson? So, why do people buy things? Necessity? Yeah, for things like groceries, but why do people spend $5,000 on a Louis Vuitton handbag when they could buy a $20 purse from Ross? Or buy $1 million home when really all they need is like a 3-bedroom home or apartment? Emotions. It's how that purchase makes you feel. That Louis Vuitton handbag will make you feel expensive. It will make you feel successful, and it will make you feel like you have status. If you can make someone feel a certain way, then your sales will be unstoppable. So, how do we do that? Let's start off easy. Why do so many photographers show their clients a slideshow set to sappy music before their ordering appointment? No shade, no shade. I do it too. But guess what? There's a good reason for it, because it gets their clients in the right emotional buying mindset. The fact that their child is graduating high school, leaving the nest, and starting their adult life is emotional enough. But when they see their beautiful daughter's professional senior pictures for the very first time in a slideshow set to music, that's when the tears start rolling, because all of a sudden it becomes too real. The actions we make can put our clients into that emotional mindset and have a real and tangible effect on our sales. Let's talk about the most common roadblocks to IPS. Feeling like a slimy salesperson, right? We often feel slimy when trying to sell something to someone because we feel like we have some ulterior motive that we're trying to push onto someone else. We feel this way because this is often how we've experienced sales ourselves. That used car salesman wants so badly to sell you that car that he will push it in your face, he will coerce you, he will wear you down until you buy it. Did you want that car? I mean, you wanted a car, maybe not that one, but did you buy it? Yeah, you did. And that's where that slimy feeling comes from. Another reason you could feel slimy is because you don't think that you or your work is worth it. Let me tell you, you are worth it, but let's not go down that rabbit hole today. That could be a whole nother class on its own. So how do we avoid this slimy feeling? You avoid it by servicing, not selling. Instead of a salesperson, I want you to think of yourself as a professional mind maker-upper. Your client wants those photos, so now all you have to do is ask questions and make suggestions to help them decide exactly how they want to display those photos. Here's an example. Your client says, "Oh my gosh, I love all of my images. How am I supposed to choose?" Well, as a professional mind maker-upper, you would help them make a decision by suggesting maybe an album. You could say something like, "That's great. An album might be a great option for you because then you can enjoy all of your photos in one spot. Would you be open to that?" Or maybe they say, "I need to get a photo for my grandma, but I just don't know which one to choose for her. I don't know which one she'll like." You could have a few different responses to this based on their client and their previous behavior. One, You could say, well, from my experience, grandmas like a more traditional portrait, but ultimately they're going to love whatever you choose because it's a photo of you. Or 2, what if we choose 3 of your favorites and put them into a folio for her? That way she has 3 photos of you and she has the option to either keep it closed or display it on her mantle. Or 3, I don't know if it's for you, but since you're getting an album already, we could just make a duplicate album for her. A duplicate album would only be $9.90 instead of $2,500. Do you see how we're merely suggesting solutions based on the problem our client is presenting? When you help them make up their mind, it makes them feel like it's their decision and there's no sliminess involved. All right, pop quiz. When does the sale start? A, during the IPS appointment, B, at the photo shoot, or C, from the first impression? I'll give you a second to think about it. If you guys C, then you're correct. Your sale starts way before the sales appointment, and everything you do matters. Let me say that again. Everything you do matters. Your ultimate goal is to build trust with your clients, because the more someone trusts you, the more likely they are to 1, buy from you, and 2, spend more with you. Trust equals higher sales. So what we're going to do is, instead of selling to them, we're going to build trust every step of the way. And this starts with the first phone call. Really it starts with their first interaction with you, which is probably your website, but we'll stick with phone call. But if even saying the words phone call gives you anxiety, I'm going to give you some tough love now. Sit down, buckle your seatbelt. You need to get over it. Make practice calls, make a script, do whatever you need to do to be comfortable talking with clients on the phone, because in a digital world, a genuine human voice will set you apart in our industry and book you more clients. I can't tell you how many times I answer my phone and the other person's like, oh, wow, you answered? And I'm like, heck yeah, I answered. I want your money. Here's an example that's happening to me right now. My husband and I just bought a fixer-upper, and we've been contacting a bunch of contractors for various projects. Guess who we've been hiring? The people who answer the phone, or at least return our call. I can't tell you, I'm shocked. I'm shocked at how many companies don't return their call, don't email us back, don't follow up after they promised an estimate. It's shocking. I don't even know how they're still in business. Moral of the story, do the dang phone call. Have you ever heard of the phrase, actions speak louder than words? Probably you did, but did you know that our actions can have a profound effect on our clients and their buying behavior? So let's talk about our first one, reciprocity. In psychology, this is also called the reciprocity bias. It basically means that when you receive a gift from somebody, you feel the need to reciprocate, either by giving them a gift in return, having them over for dinner, buying them a drink. And this is especially powerful when implemented immediately before the sales session. But here's the deal. Nothing is more effective in sales than getting the customer to believe that you like them and really truly care about them. Now, this is effective even if the gift is more generic, but it can be even more powerful when the gift is genuine, thoughtful, and personal. Here's an example of how I use it. During my first phone call with my clients, I'll ask what the seniors' plans are for after high school. They might say, I want to go to cosmetology school, or the mom might say she wants to be a nurse, or maybe it's been a dream of theirs to go to Harvard since they were 5. So after that, I'll go on Amazon or Etsy and I'll search for gifts for nurses, and I'll buy them a gift. Then I'll give them that gift at the beginning of their IPS appointment. This, 1, triggers the reciprocity bias, and guess what's the easiest, quickest way to reciprocate? Buying more things from me. And 2, receiving that personal, thoughtful gift that shows them that you were listening and you support their future goals puts them into that emotional state that we like so much. Handing things to your client. Now, right now you're probably a little confused. What does handing things to my client have to do with not selling? But did you know that simply handing something to your client can dramatically increase your sales? So let's break it down. It's hard to get an idea of the value of something just by looking at it. You really need to touch it and feel it. And this is why we have samples. So by handing someone an album, they feel the weight, they feel the texture of the pages, they feel how thick the pages are, they feel how good it feels in their hands. And they really get an understanding for the value of it. There was a study done where people rated job applicants based on their resumes. Now here's the thing. There were 2 groups with the exact same resumes. Half were given resumes attached to a heavy, thick clipboard, and the other half had a light, flimsy clipboard. Now, the people who had the heavy clipboard rated the job applicants as more serious contenders. So how does this help us? Clients are more likely to pay for the album after handling it because now they understand the full value of it. And we all know that the more valuable something is, the more importance we put on it. You can also use the action of handing someone something to trigger the comparison bias. And this means that if you hand them something heavy and well made, and then hand them something light and flimsy, they're going to prefer and attach even more value to that heavier item when compared to the light item than if you were to just hand them the heavy item on its own. Now, I use this effect every time I present album options to my clients. I will stand up, I will hand them the heavier, more expensive album first, and I will actually hold this album a little bit higher because when I do that and they take it in their hands, it kind of gives like a little extra oomph. They're like, oh, wow, oh, that's heavy. And oftentimes they'll audibly say that. They'll say, oh, wow, that's heavy. So after they're done looking through that album, I will hand them the lighter, less expensive option. Now, can you guess which one they might prefer? Pulling focus on purpose to show importance. Handing someone something to hold pulls their attention. And psychologically, things that pull our attention are subconsciously perceived as more important. As an example, what happens when your phone dings? You think, you know what, I should check that, it might be important. The phone rings, pulls your focus, seems more important, seems more urgent. Now, let's say you're a client of mine, I hand you a framed print, but I actually want you to buy this canvas. So I'll let you look at the framed print for a couple seconds, but then I will purposely start talking about the canvas and hand it to you. This forces you to put down that framed print and hold the canvas. So now which one do you think is perceived as more important and therefore more valuable? Temperature and amenability. This is a super fun one and a super interesting one. There was a study done where people were given a hot beverage to hold. Now, even if they held it briefly, just for a few seconds, that study showed that they immediately felt warmer, closer, and more trusting to the individual that gave them that warm beverage. So how can you use this to boost your sales? Well, you offer them a hot beverage, but they might say no. So better yet, if it's maybe a winter day, hand them one and say, you know what, it was chilly outside, I assumed you might want something to warm up. Even if they don't drink it or want it, you just by holding it for a few seconds will make them feel more amenable to you, more trusting, and potentially spend more money with you. This also is a two birds, one stone situation with the reciprocity effect. Remember we talked about that earlier. Have you ever given much thought to the words you use? Chances are you haven't, unless you're an over-obsessive over-analyzer like me. But here's the thing. Saying the same thing, just differently, can make a big difference in your results. Because words have the ability to trigger an action in someone's brain. And this is psychology at work. So why do we care about this? Well, we can apply certain words and phrases into our sales sessions to actually increase our sales without feeling salesy. Choosing your words wisely can have a profound effect on your client's actions and therefore your sales. So let's start with a phrase that I used earlier in one of my examples. Let's see if you caught it. How open-minded are you about? Or how open would you be to XYZ? See, people like to think of themselves as open-minded, but they especially like to think of themselves as open-minded when the other option is to be closed-minded. Prefacing whatever you're going to propose next with how open-minded are you about shifts the odds of them agreeing with you from 50-50 to 90-10. 50-50 to 90-10. That's a huge difference. How open-minded are you about making this into a gallery wall? How open-minded are you about hanging a canvas in your living room? Or the example I used earlier, that's great. An album might be a great option for you because you'll enjoy all of your photos in one spot. Would you be open to that? I'm not sure if it's for you, but. Now this is one of my favorite phrases. I mean, all of them are my favorites, but I like this one because it acts in 3 different ways. So 3 birds, 1 stone. Number 1, the subconscious brain hears, there's no pressure here. I'm not sure if it's for you, but maybe an album might be a good idea. No pressure, but just throwing that out. Number 2, it triggers something called the information gap or the curiosity gap, and the conscious mind wonders what it is. I'm not sure if it's for you, but a canvas might fit your aesthetic nicely. And number 3, the ego says, well, I'll be the one who decides if it's for me or not. I'm not sure if it's for you, but this taupe color might fit really nicely in your home. A great way to use this is when presenting a high-priced product or if you're testing the waters to get a feel for the client's taste and budget. It's no pressure on them, and it's no pressure on you if they say no. I'll bet you're a bit like me. This phrase, when presented before a scenario or proposal, can often get people to quickly agree with you. It's a great phrase if you're not sure if someone's going to agree with you, but you want them to agree with you. It works so well, in fact, that I have literally used this phrase to get out of Airbnb cancellation fees. So again, we ask ourselves, how can we use this to increase our sales? I bet you're a bit like me and you always second guess your decisions and then later regret not pulling the trigger. Or, I bet you're a bit like me and you appreciate quality handmade items. I mean, they're not going to say no, they're probably going to say yes, and then that makes it even more easy to suggest those items to purchase. What makes you say that? Objections are part of business, and they're definitely a part of sales. Objections can be uncomfortable, they can be scary, and we can often find ourselves acquiescing instead of trying to get to the root of the objection. As soon as someone objects, the power shifts from you to them. But the key to a successful sales session, and in business in general, is to maintain the control of the conversation. So by treating every objection you face as merely a question disguised as confrontation, regaining control of the conversation is much easier. So here's an example of common objections you might hear or you may have already heard. We can't afford it. I need to speak to my husband about this first. I haven't got the time to schedule this photo shoot right now. Now, the worst thing that you can do is to respond with a counter argument when you don't even know the real reason they objected in the first place. Oftentimes, these objections are just excuses to put off making a decision, or they're a polite way of saying no. So, how do you respond? What makes you say that? Now, this leaves the other person obligated to answer and fill in the gaps of their previous statement. And this also allows you to fully understand their objections before you respond or recommend solutions. I'll bet you're a bit like me and you usually ask, do you have any questions for me? When phrased this way, do you have any questions for me? It sounds like a burden, and it sounds like you want to get out of there and you're just asking as a courtesy. But when we change it to, what questions do you have for me? It sounds like you are assuming they have questions, which means that the easiest response for them is to ask questions. Questions are great. They are one of my favorite things. Genuinely, they're one of my favorite things, especially in business, because it means that they're interested. If they're not interested, they're not going to ask questions. For example, I can always tell when someone isn't going to book me because at the end of the call, I'll ask, what questions do you have? And they'll say they have none. Another benefit to prompting them to ask questions is that questions re-engage the brain to be present and to digest what you just told them. So you're making sure that they actually understand the pricing and that they actually understand what's included in their package. Decoy pricing. Now, this is also known as anchoring. And this is what can help you sell more of what you want to sell and help hit your average more often. What you're going to do is you're going to take the same item, but different, and price it higher. So for example, I have two different albums, my heirloom album and my signature album. Now, I have no intention of actually selling the heirloom album. I mean, if I do, it's a nice bonus and that's great. But really, it's just there as a price anchor for my signature album. You see, the trick is to show the client the highest priced item first. Remember from earlier how I show my clients the heavier album first? Well, this works in two ways. Two birds, one stone. Like the earlier example, it really does show them that the heirloom is heavier and higher quality. So if that's what they value, that action works in my favor. But if they're more price conscious, then it also works in my favor by acting as a price decoy for my signature album. When they hear the price of the heirloom, $2,500, they're slightly shocked, which is what I want. When I immediately follow up with the signature album price of $1,900, it makes that album seem much more accessible. Plus, the signature album is the album that I really want to sell because it's only slightly cheaper than the heirloom, but my margins are way higher. Here's another way that you can use price anchoring in your favor. This one's a little bit more difficult to kind of weave in there, but I'm sure you can do it. You're going to throw out an outrageously large number, and the rest is just going to seem like peanuts. If you can find a way to throw out an absurdly large number, or maybe it's possibly the highest number you could imagine, or the highest sale you've ever made, it will make anything less than that number seem so much more palatable. For example, when talking about pricing with a client, I will say, I've had clients spend $15,000 before. Now, this large number will stick in their head, so that way $5,000 doesn't seem so bad. Here's another real-world example that happened to me. I was shopping with a friend, and we were checking out. The cashier accidentally mixed up the numbers when they told us the price. They said it was $632 instead of $362. Now, when they said $632, both of our stomachs dropped. The cashier immediately corrected what they said and said it was $362, which made us both feel a lot better. My friend happily handed over the credit card, feeling relieved that her total wasn't $600. But here's the funny thing. If you knew this friend, you would know that she is the most frugal person I know. She's a lawyer, she makes great money, but she has a hard time paying $5 for a Starbucks coffee. So to see her happy about paying $300 was probably something I will never see again. And this is psychology work. Psychology is amazing. But there's one more way that throwing out a large number can help you. For example, when I'm on the phone with a potential client and I say, on average, our clients spend about $4,000 to $5,000, but I've had clients spend upwards of $15,000 before. I'm quiet and I listen for their reaction. Most clients are they're gonna gasp a little bit, like, oh my god, $15,000? And I'm gonna say, yeah, I mean, how ridiculous is that? But there are some that might not respond, might not react, and they might even be like, okay. And that's when I know that those are the clients that might not be so price conscious, and they might just be my next highest sale. Now let's talk about the psychology of numbers. I'm sure that you've gone shopping before and you've seen price tags like $6.99. So why is this? Well, I'm sure you can guess, but brains really like shortcuts. And so as a shortcut, people's brains typically only process the first 1 to 2 numbers in a price. So when you see $6.99, economically it's basically $7, but your brain sees it as $6. We as photographers can use the same shortcut with our pricing. However, I caution you to only use whole numbers. Here's why. Prices that end in 95 and 99 are typically used in regular stores and discount stores. So numbers like $69.99 can be interpreted as cheap. But whole numbers are used by luxury high-end retail stores. And we want to position ourselves to be on par with them. This is also called the psychology of association. As an example, with my signature album, I wanted to charge $2,000, but I priced it at $1,900. Now this is more or less $2,000, but the brain doesn't read $2,000, it reads 1,000 something something, which seems less and makes it more palatable. This is also a whole number, which signals luxury and quality to the brain. I could have just as easily set the price to $1,999.99, but that feels cheap. Here's another example. Louis Vuitton purses versus Amazon purses. Can you see the difference in the prices? And how do they make you feel? Now this brings me to something called perceived value. Here's the funny thing about perceived value. Even if someone is price conscious, they are more likely to think something is valuable if it has a high price tag on it. Let me say that again. People are more likely to perceive something as more valuable if you tell them that it's valuable. And we can do this with the price tag we put on it. Let's continue with the Louis Vuitton example. Their bags are made with genuine leather, but so are other purses, right? Their bags are made with a high attention to detail, but so are their purses. So how did they become a luxury brand with handbags that are so valuable that there are literally knockoffs everywhere? Well, because they told us they were valuable. And among other things, they did this with their pricing. Let's look at another real world example. Can you tell me the difference between these two cars? Yeah, they look slightly different, but they both have leather seats, navigation, satellite radio. They have all the bells and whistles. But one of them is $59,225, and the other is $92,870. Why? Because GMC decided to take the exact same car, rebrand it as a Cadillac, slap a higher price tag on it, and tell us it was worth more. So, how can we use this to increase our sales? Do we want to just slap a high price on cheap items? No, it's not going to work. But if you source quality, well-made items and price them higher than just a 30% margin, mine are at 80%, people will buy them, and happily too. Because keep this in mind, it's not just the paper they're buying your expertly crafted images printed on the finest photographic paper in a hand-bound, genuine leather album that's going to be a family heirloom that will last a lifetime. Let's talk about your pricing and how you should be presenting it. The number one mistake I see is when photographers show their clients the price list instead of telling their clients the prices. And there's a few things that this does. Number one, you've given your thoughtful gift to your client. You've gotten them into that emotional mindset with your slideshow. They're prepped and primed to buy. And then you show them numbers. Numbers trigger the analytical part of the brain, and it snaps out of that emotional mindset that we need them in. Number two, it's honestly kind of a cowardly way to get out of something that's scary, like presenting prices. Again, probably because you don't think you're worth it. Just another class, we'll do that later. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't give your clients a price list. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Your client should have ample access to your pricing so there are no surprises, because surprises are the easiest way to lose trust, and we need that trust to have these sales. But you should have verbally gone over your prices during your first consultation with them, handed them your welcome guide, pointed out the prices inside, and sent them a link to the PDF guide before the sales session. They can analyze all they want before the IPS session, but we want them in that emotional buying mindset for the actual sales appointment. Here's a quick tip for your price list. Remember when we talked about decoy pricing and anchoring? Take your most expensive item and list it first, all the way at the top of that list. Then I want you to list everything else in descending order with your least expensive option at the bottom. Your client will see the highest price first, be a little bit shocked, but then everything else underneath it is going to seem so much less expensive, making it easier to buy. Framing. There was a study that came out of the University of Geneva where people were asked if it was okay to smoke while they prayed. Now, 96% of people said no, it's not okay to smoke while you pray. Then they asked another group if it was okay to pray while they smoked. Now, 97% of people said yes. The same two things happening simultaneously, but framing it changed the response drastically. Another study from Stanford found that framing things in terms of time and experience can actually be more powerful than framing things in terms of money. Why is this? It's because time is something that you can never get back. There was actually an experiment done with lemonade stands. People would walk by and see one of three signs. One said, "Spend a little time and enjoy some lemonade." Another one said, "Spend a little money and enjoy some lemonade." And then the last one said, "Just enjoy some lemonade." Interestingly, the spend a little time stand was the most successful. More people stopped, they were higher rated, and people actually spent more money at that lemonade stand. So how can we use this in our business? We frame it as an experience. If you were to go to my website right now, you would see the word experience at least 537 times. It's not just seeing your pictures, it's an experience. It's a once in a lifetime experience. In fact, they will only graduate high school once in their life, hopefully. So let's make the most of it and celebrate with an experience unlike anything they've ever experienced before. Social proof. Social proof is a decision-making shortcut that we use all the time, and sometimes even without knowing it. When looking for a new restaurant to try, how do you decide if it's worth a shot or not? Reviews, right? If you're looking at that menu and you can't decide, which item are you going to be drawn to most and most likely to order? Ones that say most popular or chef's choice, right? In fact, one study found that simply labeling a dish most popular on a menu made it more popular by 13 to 20%. You've probably also heard phrases like, "People like you choose XYZ," or "Clients like you buy XYZ." We can use social proof in our business by, one, asking for reviews, which I know can be hard, so I provided you with the email template that I use to ask for reviews in that Peak Power Pack that you can download. And two, labeling things that we want to sell more as most popular. For example, when I'm going through my samples with my clients, I will always say, just about everybody gets at least one acrylic block, but most buy about 2 or 3. This tells them that everybody likes it, so therefore it must be good and valuable, and it also gives them permission to buy more than one. And guess what? Now 99% of my clients buy an acrylic block. Now there are so many more things that we could talk about when it comes to selling without selling. I've literally just touched the tip of the iceberg today. From what to wear and how that affects your sales, to scarcity, likability, mirroring, signaling, conformity, confirmation, consistency, all of these things. I don't have to read that list to you. You can read it. And like I've said before, I absolutely love and adore questions. So please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you, and let's chat. Bye, guys. Cooper. So if they trip you, if phone calls trip you up, in psychology, this is also called the reciprocity. Two birds, one stone. Love that. God, I keep losing my sparks. I'm trying to be funny. Remember how I show my clients the heavier... Remember how from... No! Genuine leather album, that's going to be a fair...